Welcome to Drinks Coach. It's Thursday, and today is World Chardonnay Day. These things do seem to crop up quite often, don't they? Okay, Drinks Coach UK or lowercase, Vinesack or lowercase for my personal Insta and Twitter account. I mean, who in their right mind would try and encapsulate Chardonnay in 10 minutes? Well, I'm going to give it a go. Okay, so Chardonnay. How do we do this efficiently? What is Chardonnay? Okay, that's a good start. Chardonnay is a village in the south of Burgundy. It's in the Mâconnais, in the Mâcon district, which we believe is where the name Chardonnay came from. Not surprising, therefore, that by far and away the most widely planted variety in Burgundy is Chardonnay, certainly for white wines anyway. But also, Chardonnay isn't a grape variety. Not really. It's what we refer to as a cultivar, which is different. A cultivar was something that was not genetically assessed, but was more a group of grapes that were quite largely similar would be planted in a vineyard. They knew there were slightly different vines in there, so they would plant them in a vineyard, and they go, that's our white wine, and that's our red wine. And basically you'd have a field blend. And even to this very day, although it's not really talked about, if you go to some of the top vineyards in Burgundy, some of the very most expensive white wines in the world, in fact, you will find that they're not all technically Chardonnay. You might find the odd Auxerrois vine, or the odd Pinot Gris vine, or the odd Pinot Blanc vine. And more important than that, Chardonnay has hundreds and hundreds of different clones. So there isn't such thing as one simple Chardonnay. Imagine it as lots of children at a school singing in the school choir. They all go to the same school, they all wear the same badge, but there's a lot of diversity within the group. Tall, short, black, white, just everything mixed together creates unique identity. So that's really what we're talking about with Chardonnay. And that's why, in so many ways, Chardonnay is so special. Because when you drink a glass of Chardonnay, almost every Chardonnay you drink will be slightly different. And it has so many subtle layers. There's so many little tiny different cogs in the machine that you just get this huge complexity and plethora, which you just don't get in other varieties, not in many varieties anyway. But it's very, very hard to even suggest that there are any single what we call monovarietal wines which are as complex as those made from Chardonnay, because in fact what you're doing is you're making it from about 400 different sub-varieties anyway. So that's the secret behind Chardonnay's success in many ways. And you can plant it. I once heard somebody say, mate, Chardonnay, you can grow it on a cow's ass, which is sort of true. You can grow it anywhere. You could probably grow it on the moon if there was enough rain, of which there is none, obviously. But you can grow it in England. You can grow it in Champagne, where they make Blanc de Blanc champagne out of it. You can grow it in very cold areas like Shapley, which is only just a stone's throw further south of Paris than the area of Champagne. Or you can grow it in the northern territories of Australia, in a place called Chateau Hornsby, where it never dips under about 40 degrees during the summer. So it's able to cope with a huge plethora of different climates, and it gives of itself very differently in each one of those climates. What's wonderful about Chardonnay is not only does it show and reflect the place it's from in a way that most grape varieties possibly don't, but it's also very manipulable. There are so many things you can do to Chardonnay to make it taste different. We call this in wine tasting artifact. Artifact is what the winemaker has put into the wine rather than what's just come out of the soil. And I think purists would say the finest wines in the world are left well alone in most cases, and they then speak themselves with more purity. But there are some things you do to Chardonnay to pimp it up. Everyone does it, whether it's the most expensive white Burgundies, whether it's Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, California, whatever. For example, they batonnage, they stir with a stick called a bâton. They stir the wine every week or 2 weeks during the fermentation, which thickens the wine up. It stirs up the dead yeast cells in the wine, which gives the wine more texture and more creaminess, which fits in with the textural creamy aromas that the wine gets after it's gone through either its first alcoholic fermentation, but can also go through a second fermentation, what we call the malolactic conversion or bacterial fermentation, where the wine stops tasting appley and fresh, starts tasting creamy and peanutty and so forth. Anyway, 3 wines to try and demonstrate Chardonnay, and we have 6 minutes. Okay, so we're starting with this one. I was trying to really sort of show the extremes of Chardonnay. This is Tesco's finest Chablis Premier Cru 2017. Chablis is probably the most famous wine brand in the world. If you say Chablis in any country, most people know you're talking about white wine. And it's still plagiarised in many, many different countries. I think I once went to Sierra Leone and somebody had a vineyard there and they called it Sierra Leone Chablis. It probably wasn't even made from Chardonnay. But here we've got a wine which epitomises for me the cool end of the Chardonnay spectrum. Just in case you didn't know, all Chablis is 100% Chardonnay, right? Okay, so it's grown on soil which is very, very chalky, which gives the wine a huge amount of minerality in the wine because it holds on to the water so hard that you get these very high densities and concentrations in the mouth, which almost makes it feel like there's actual chalk in the mouth. It's like pumice stone. It's almost like it's got its own tannin, but it's not quite the same. This is really good. 2017 was a very good Chablis vintage. 15 was a little warm for Chablis because you're trying to eke out those really minerally characters, the shivery, what the French call charnu, which means chiseled character. You want this kind of almost cold, wet marble hardness to the wine. It's very aloof, sexy, but not forthcoming, if you know what I mean. So this wine smells almost like the sea. You can smell the surf rolling. There's an ozone quality about it. And you can taste this like licking cold, hard stone. It's a tingle, and there's lots of acidity. The average temperature in Chablis is about the same as it is in Manchester, but the hots are a lot hotter and the colds are a lot colder, and it doesn't rain as much. But just to give you some sort of idea of how far north we are, this is no Saint-Tropez, and I think that's a fantastic supermarket Chablis, and I've been waiting to drink this. I've had it knock about the house since we started this, and I was just waiting for the right time, and along comes Chardonnay Day. Fantastic. So at one end we've got very cool climate, steely, tight, not really juicy, fruity, but kind of the opposite. It's almost the foil to your rich food. Brilliant with lobster. I mean, there's nothing better, or with crab, or that sort of thing. If you like seafood, oysters, of course, Chablis is a famous match for that. Let's go right to the other end of the extreme. This is a vineyard, very large vineyard, over 500 acres, I believe, in the central coast of California. Mr. Talbott sold this vineyard back in, I think, 2015, so it's under new ownership now. And it's a place that overlooks Monterey Bay, which is a very, very warm place. If you go, whatever it is, what's that, an hour and a half's drive south of San Francisco, you're here. And Monterey is a very, very warm place which grows vines. I think almost the warmest place on earth that's growing Chardonnay, and this is almost the coldest, if you put it in those perspectives. Okay, so let's have a taste of this. Now, this is a bottle I've had for a long time, and I wanted to see, even because Chardonnay's famous for aging, even if the wine comes from a hot, fat, juicy, American-styled and an American climate Californian vineyard, do these wines age? Because most Sauvignon Blancs you drink, they're dead after maybe anything between 6 months and 18 months. Good stuff can age for a very, very long time. But they're made to be drunk wham bam when you buy them in the bottle. Move on to the next vintage as soon as it arrives. 2015. This is 5 years old. It's Californian. Have a look at the colour. It's golden. Seriously gold colour there. Lots of extract in the wine. The Americans, because they've enjoyed having very, very big, rich, ripe styles of Chardonnay over the years, I think I've kind of got used to it. And I think, we all know that a lot of things are a lot bigger in America, but they like things a bit bigger and bolder, whether it's a car, whether it's a house, whether it's a wine. There's a real sensibility that they want these wines to be almost a caricature of themselves. I don't mean that in a bad way, but if a Chardonnay is steely and lean and clean, the Americans go, hey, that's not what Chardonnay is supposed to taste like. Certainly not Chardonnay from where we come from anyway. It kind of messes with their heads that there's so many different styles of Chardonnay in Europe. And you can go from everything from ice cold, minerally and sharp, right up to these sort of fat beasts. Let's have a sniff. I was fully expecting that wine to be knackered by now. Nothing of the sort. I don't know what vintage they're on at the moment, but I think Talbott Hart was on 2018, and this is 3 years older than that. If you're buying a supermarket premium Chardonnay from California around the £15 mark, which I think is where this sits, you wouldn't expect it to keep for 5 or 6 years. You certainly wouldn't, but this has, and that's in a very warm year too. So impressed. Taste of quince, almost banana-y, pineapple, cooked pineapple, very, very indulgent and rich. almost oily. Again, that can go with lobster every bit as well as Chablis can, because you can either have wines that cut through the fat and the richness and the sweetness of high protein foods, or you can have those that mimic it, and it's almost like you surf the wave of richness. So the wine's rich, the food's rich, and that can work just as well. Right, a few seconds to finish. This is a Rustenberg from South Africa. Why am I showing you this? Well, I've shown you one end, I've shown you the other end. There's only 10 minutes, so there's only so much I can say. And I love South African Chardonnay, particularly Stellenbosch Chardonnay, particularly Elgin Chardonnay, Hebenada Chardonnay. There are regions that are just pumping out superb, world-class, every bit as good as Burgundy Chardonnays in South Africa. Australia's been doing it for a while, but Australia, the best Chardonnays, deservedly so, are $100 wines now. Nothing of the sort really in South Africa. These wines are still exceptional value. So, this is the 2019 Rustenberg. Shout out to the legend winemaker Ardie Badenhorst, who's in the Swartland now, but he became famous as the chief winemaker here. And Rustenberg's a beautiful vineyard and on a beautiful mountainside, the Rustenberg Mountain, the Rusten. And at the bottom there's a beautiful herd of cows which look picture perfect. And they were the cows that were shot for the English Anchor butter adverts, which is quite a nice bit of trivia. Anyway, it's younger, it's more primary fruit. Fresh pineapple this time rather than cooked pineapple. There's a lovely slaty minerality underneath. Stellenbosch has these really old soils which have a drag. They're Terra Rossa soils, they're dusty red soils, and you can taste a minerally iron-rich character in them. That wine's in Waitrose for £15 at the moment. £15 buys you much more Chardonnay in South Africa than any other New World country I can think of right now. So there you have it. That's my little triptych. Chablis Premier Cru. Don't imagine there's any change out of 20 for that. Then there's £15, and then there's £15. Like for like. See you next week.